by Hezbollah fighters exploded near simultaneously Tuesday, and the next day the terror group's walkie-talkies also blew up. The Lebanese Health Ministry does report at least 37 people were killed in the explosions, with more than 3,000 injured. While no one has claimed responsibility for the attacks, Nasrallah says Hezbollah is certain that Israel was behind it. There's been no confirmation from the Israeli government or Israel Defense Forces of any involvement in this. As Hezbollah continues to attack Israel, 2 Israeli soldiers were killed and 9 others wounded in Hezbollah missile and drone attacks on northern Israel Thursday. A lot to discuss, as always, here, so I do want to bring in a friend of the show, Josh Hasten, a Middle East correspondent with the Jewish News Syndicate. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thanks so much, Josh.
All right, so first question here. This is one that I've talked to a lot of experts about, so I do want to get your take on this overall. This seems like a pretty sophisticated situation that did happen there with the pagers and the walkie-talkies. So how complex is this process, and does it have kind of the blueprint of Israel on it?
Yeah, as you mentioned before, Israel's not taking credit for it, but all signs indicate that this was Israeli intelligence, which, what I understand, took years to plan this type of strike. You're talking about thousands of pagers detonating simultaneously, and the very next day, thousands of walkie-talkies detonating. So this took some serious planning. I'm envisioning a room of all experts getting together on this, technology experts, military experts, Israeli government officials. Again, Israel didn't take credit, but I'm imagining a room full of these people perhaps years ago deciding how is the best way we can attack our enemy, Hezbollah. Because remember, Hezbollah is not a new enemy. They've been around for years. So I'm envisioning this meeting where all these experts get together and decide this is the best way we're going to carry out, remember, a pinpointed strike. These were pinpointed attacks. If you were not a member of Hezbollah, if you did not have one of these pagers or not one of these walkie-talkies or weren't affiliated with them, then you didn't get hurt. The Lebanese people were not the target of this attack. It was the Hezbollah terrorists, unprecedented, unbelievable, and certainly a major dent in the command level of those Hezbollah terrorists, which Nasrallah admitted yesterday.
And talking a little bit more about Nasrallah, what stood out to you about his address? That was a televised public address that took place less than 24 hours ago.
Yeah, the fact that Nasrallah admitted this was a devastating blow, I think that to me was the most surprising, or the thing that stood out the most, because usually, you know, they get on the television, these terrorist leaders, and they lie. They say, no, it wasn't a serious incident. We were barely scratched. That's usually what happens when Israel or another party takes part in these types of operations. He said that this was a devastating blow. At the same time, he also, whether he realized that he was going to do this or not, he said he was going to strike back, Hezbollah would strike back at Israel, similarly to the destructions of the temple in Jerusalem, like the first temple by the Babylonians and the second temple by the Romans. He alluded to that, which basically gives credit or actually you know, lets you know that those temples did exist in Jerusalem. He admitted there were temples in Jerusalem. That's something that's unprecedented. I don't think he meant to do that, but for years, you know, they claim it's a Muslim holy site. They deny, these terrorist groups deny the Jewish history, Jewish connection to Jerusalem, and he actually unwittingly said that we are going to try to attack Israel as the Babylonians and as the Romans did thousands of years ago.
That's an interesting take because, yeah, I hadn't heard about that. And that's something that a lot of people probably didn't think about or look into. So I'm glad you were able to point that out there. Now, as far as a retaliatory attack, and I call it retaliatory even though Israel has not claimed responsibility for this, do we expect an attack by Hezbollah on Israel to be even more intense than the ones that we've seen over the past several months?
So on one hand, Israel did, if in fact we were responsible for it, did extreme damage. Right now, we definitely set them back. But that being said, the rockets are still being fired at Israel even today. Rockets and drones are still being launched at Israel. Last night, Israel struck about 100 targets and took out about 1,000 rocket launchers. So they are definitely preparing to strike Israel heavily. The question is, what are their capabilities now? Now that we've dealt them a serious blow, what are they able to do in the future? So on one hand, it's possible that it could take some time for them to regroup. On the other hand, they're still firing, and we could see a major escalation in the days ahead if they do have the capabilities. Let's remember, Hezbollah has over 100,000 rockets and missiles and drones aimed at the state of Israel, and I don't think that fact has changed, even with the great successes we've seen in the last 24 and 48 hours.
We have started seeing reports that Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, who was set to actually go over and visit the Middle East, specifically over in Israel next week, that he has now postponed his trip. Reading into that a little bit, do you think it's a possible indicator that the U.S. believes things could potentially escalate over the next few days or maybe week?
It's very possible. I just got an alert on my phone just several minutes ago that the communities in certain areas of northern Israel, the residents there have been instructed to stay by their shelters. I know that order came out yesterday and then was taken back. It was reissued once again. So Israel's definitely anticipating some sort of strike from Hezbollah, and perhaps the U.S. administration is afraid to send a top-level official such as Lloyd Austin to the region when things could in fact spiral out of control. I just hope that Israel takes advantage of this opportunity with all of these Hezbollah commanders wounded or dead. And I hear the numbers are actually much higher. That has not been confirmed in terms of those who were killed in the beeper attacks or the walkie-talkie attacks. So Israel really must take advantage of the situation when the coals are hot and strike Hezbollah. Again, this is a maniacal evil terror organization. They've been doing this for many, many years. It's nothing new. They took advantage of the October 7th massacre carried out by Hamas, and they started attacking Israel on October the 8th and have attacked basically every day since.
Would Hezbollah be, I'm going to use the word bold and say, would they be bold enough to attack Israel knowing that Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin or any other high-ranking U.S. official was actually there in Israel at the time?
It wouldn't surprise me, on one hand, they want to take certain precautions, but on the other hand, let's remember, Hezbollah is another one of the tentacles of the octopus, which is Iran. And Iran's goal is the destruction of the state of Israel and the destruction of the Western world, especially the United States. They call Israel the little Satan. They call the United States the great Satan. So it would definitely be a pleasurable thing for them if they could do a 2-for-1, if they could strike the state of Israel and take out a major official from the United States. Of course, on the other hand, it could prove lethal to them if they did such a thing and attacked, the greatest superpower in the world, the United States. But I don't think there'd be any shedded tears if Hezbollah was able to actually kill a U.S. official. We've seen the Houthis, which is also a branch of the Iranian terror regime, another tentacle, attack U.S. troops and U.S. vessels there in also the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf area, or whatnot. So I don't think they take that into a huge factor. Again, it could be a 2-for-1 for them if a major U.S. figure was here in the region.
Right now, do you think that Israel is more focused on fighting Hezbollah versus Hamas? Because, of course, nearly a year ago, we saw the October 7th attack by Hamas on Israel that launched the whole Gaza war. The focus has been there on defeating Hamas, but is the focus now kind of shifting to defeating Hezbollah?
Yeah, the war against Hamas and Gaza still continues. But that being said, we have seen troop movement. For example, the 98th Battalion there, paratroopers, commandos, and whatnot have been shifted from the south, from Gaza to the north, preparing for a potential escalation with Hezbollah. So again, the war is certainly not over against Hamas, and Israel will have to maintain a military presence for a long, long time down there to ensure that Hamas does not rearm, is not able once again to carry out similar attacks like the October 7th massacre. But practically speaking, on the ground, Israel has in fact transferred troops, high-level commandos and paratroopers to the northern border. So that's definitely the case. We're definitely preparing for some type of major escalation, an all-out war. It's kind of been this proxy war and this subtle war until now, but it could be an all-out war in the days and weeks ahead, and Israel's preparing for that scenario.
What should people be watching for right now over in the north? As you mentioned, of course, folks have been told if they haven't evacuated and they're in the north to stay near their bomb shelters, pay attention to alerts. What should people be watching out for specifically?
So number one, there are still 80,000 Israelis who are not in their homes. They've been evacuated from the communities on the actual border itself. And the Israeli government this week decided that officially one of the war goals is to return those 80,000 to their homes. And then you had the attack with the walkie-talkies and with the pagers. So again, I think Israel's goal right now is to get those people home. It's been almost a year, people living in hotels, people not living in their homes. So that is the goal. And if in fact that is the goal, you could see Israel take even more steps in order to disband the threat rather of the Hezbollah terror regime. As we are speaking right now, Israel just 1:00 p.m. local time here in Israel, there was another set of attacks, another launch of attacks by the Israeli Air Force against Hezbollah targets. I think that will continue. The coals are hot. Now is the time to continue this operation as best as possible in order to ensure that the northern border remains quiet. If that means going into Lebanon itself and creating a buffer zone, as a lot of military experts are talking about, so be it. But Hezbollah can no longer be a threat, and those 80,000 people have to go home.
All right. Josh Hasten, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help break down some of the developments. They are happening quite a bit, so we appreciate you joining us here today. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Now, I would just say that, we only want safety here in the state of Israel. Our troops are fighting valiantly, both in the north and in the south. And as our prime minister said many times, Israel's actually fighting on 7 fronts. We were attacked this week. I don't know if people are aware. The Iraqis fired a missile towards the state of Israel this week, and then the Houthis did earlier in the week. So we're being attacked on 7 fronts, and Israel's doing everything in its possible to defend our citizens while minimizing civilian casualties on the other side. And I know Israel, if you go on social media, Israel gets criticized all over the place, claiming that we are attacking or targeting civilians, and that's just not the case. So I would tell people out there, don't fall for the spin, don't fall for the propaganda against the state of Israel. We target terrorists, while the terrorists are targeting our civilians, oftentimes hiding by their own civilians. Something very, very important I think people need to pay attention to.
All right, Josh, thank you again for taking the time to join us, be here with us, and break it all down. We appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a great day. Thanks so much.
You too. Time now 6:12.